And thank you very much for having me speak with you. I hope someone can actually show my slides, and I'll just say when to progress to the next slide, if that's okay. Unfortunately, I'm traveling and need someone to show those. So is that happening? Can someone? Yeah, great. Thank you. So I'm going to take you out of the weeds, I think, and the detail and the deep chemistry that we were just discussing with Professor Tracy, and get back up into the blue sky opportunity space that Indonesia has to innovate in the whole battery supply chain as the sort of superpower of nickel production in the world, which is a critical mineral in the battery supply chain. So just to say a word about who I am, if you could go to the next slide, please. I run New Energy Nexus, which is a global organization that supports startups. We train entrepreneurs, we provide funding, we invest in businesses around the world, including in Indonesia. If you could go to the next slide. It's an international organization that has its roots in California, and we are all over the world, as I mentioned, across Southeast Asia. But in California, for the last 10 years, we've been doing a lot of work with battery companies, all the way back to Tesla in 2005, but also many lithium ion and zinc and redox flow battery companies. I'm sorry, did someone just say something? Do I need to stop? Nope. Let me know if this is not coming through. But suffice to say that New Energy Nexus has worked on the battery supply chain and entrepreneurship and supporting startups for a long time. If you go to the next slide, we also started programs in Indonesia in the last 5 years, more around energy access and electric mobility and training solar entrepreneurs and supporting them to succeed in the big cities of Java and Sumatra. I was just there, and that's where I met Professor Kartini at the Respark Festival in Jakarta in earlier this month. We do a lot of events and a lot of training and support for startups. So that's just a little bit about New Energy Nexus and me, as to why I'm coming to talk to you about the next slide, please, which is opportunities in the supply chain, and the fact that it's a real chance for Indonesia to step up out of the middle income trap and develop more value capture of the battery supply chain than just nickel and concentrates, and to go all the way through. And I know you've probably been talking about this for the last days, so apologies if this is redundant, but I'll just share some experience from here in the United States and other countries that are thinking about the huge boom that is coming in batteries. So next slide, please. Obviously, you all know this, but there's many places in which innovation can take place. There's the raw materials and the mining processes themselves, and then the processing and refining of the ores into concentrates for production of the battery components. And those 2 or 3 steps down the line, from nickel to nickel sulfate, the manganese, the lithium, all of the raw materials, there's a lot of innovation required. We're doing it in a process that is really hundreds of years old and hasn't been improved through technology or chemistry for some time. And so there's a lot of opportunities. I was just in Australia after I visited Indonesia, and there we're seeing lithium recovered from ore without any heat through chemical and pressure processes, for example. So there's a whole lot of opportunity space for entrepreneurs to invent new process steps and new chemistry technologies that could improve the raw material refining. And then there's all the actual component manufacturing, turning them into battery cells, as we were just talking about, cells into packs into systems, and ultimately to capture the whole circular economy of the battery supply chain, and to recycle, or first reuse and then to recycle, these batteries that will be made using raw materials derived from Indonesia. And the real vision here is to capture that circular economy so that a few decades from now, Indonesia may not need to mine raw materials like nickel, but rather be manufacturing and remanufacturing products like batteries and electric vehicles riding on the nickel metal that was extracted in the 2020s and reuse that throughout time. And all that is an opportunity for entrepreneurship, which is what we look to support at New Energy Nexus. In the next slide, if you could move to that, it's just the same process flow in pretty pictures. Take away the word lithium and put in the word nickel, and you have the Indonesian opportunity space. It's everything from taking the raw materials to concentrate, processing that into useful chemicals for batteries, manufacturing the cathodes, making the cells, making the packs, putting them in EVs, and this energy storage system. Here in America, if you could go to the next slide, we've been involved with innovation across that supply chain. We have backed companies, not all of these, but many of these, through our programs, accelerators, incubators, and we would expect an ecosystem as great, if not greater than this, in Indonesia in coming years, just to try to give you a sense of sort of the market opportunity. We predict conservatively that the battery supply chain for electric vehicles and grid storage using nickel lithium chemistries will be in the order of $200 billion per annum by 2025. We know that the raw material providers only capture single-digit billions of that value through their export of raw materials. The rest of this value chain, the cell components, the battery manufacture, the management, and recycling of those will be the giant portion of that value. And we can innovate throughout that, not just in extraction and recovery of the ores, in how better to titrate the components and chemistry, how to make cells that are highly functional and durable, how to make packs, how to make software and battery management systems to run the packs, how to install them in the vehicles and on the grid, and then what to do with them at end of life for second use or for recycling. All of those spaces require brains like yours to come up with new ideas, to innovate and create new business models, new technologies that will dynamize and disrupt this value chain and capture more market share for Indonesia and for your companies. So that's kind of why I'm here, just to encourage you to pursue innovation in the battery supply chain. If you could go to the next slide, just to say why, it's not just a greedy impulse to get a big market share of the battery supply chain, which is going to grow by the numbers, but it's because we want to create jobs in places like Indonesia, where there's a young population looking for good work and meaningful work, which this is, because it will also save the planet. These batteries are going to be the linchpin technology for the electrification of everything. They are necessary to balance the grid as we go to renewable resources. Here in California, we've just installed 2 gigawatts in the last year of battery storage on the grid. We're also now at 20% per month adoption of electric vehicles. That is an enormous demand for new batteries. And so that's going to grow, but it's the only way we can decarbonize critical sectors of the economy like transport and electricity. So if we're to meet the demand for the battery supply chain, these are estimates that I haven't shown elsewhere, but we have estimated preliminary figures from the American economy. If we were to meet the domestic battery requirements here in the US, and remember the United States, I'm just using this as an example because the United States is very similar in size to Indonesia, about 300 million people. We would be creating something in the order of 200 to 300,000 jobs by 2030, which I think are real valuable jobs, premium jobs in the economy. Here in America, we're desperate for good jobs. I know in Indonesia, with a young, aspiring population, good jobs are critical. one of the challenges is the kinds of jobs that are needed. But the good news is a lot of them are labor related, blue collar jobs, we call that in America. There's a lot of scientists, which it sounds like there are many scientists on this conference, engineers, chemical, electrical, mechanical, civil, software, all that kind of engineering is needed for the battery innovation ecosystem. There's also white collar jobs like financial engineers, structuring debt for deployment of these batteries and manufacturing systems, technicians to run the factories. All of these jobs will be needed. And where there's a shortage, which we have in America, of the right kind of labor to provide those positions in time by 2030, we think we can take those positions from other industries, upskill workers from fossil fuels, take graduates from universities, which I know there are many of coming out of Indonesian universities. New Energy Nexus Indonesia partners with Pertamina and other great universities. I'm sure Gajah Mada and many other great universities, Institute of Technology in Bandung, will have great talent for this. And if that's not available, to import the talent to build this innovation ecosystem. So, sorry, that's the next slide, if you can. I'm not sure if you've, yeah. To finish, just to say how we can help at New Energy Nexus, you know, as I mentioned, the organization I run, we provide programs like the Smart Energy program in Jakarta. I'm not there myself, but I encourage you to contact our team. If you go to the next slide, we also have small grants for startups in the space, and we can invest in companies that are growing in the space. If you go to the next slide, please, you'll see a photo in the bottom right-hand corner of our team I was with just earlier this month, as I mentioned, in Jakarta. They're all there to contact and serve you if you want to start up a startup and become an innovator in the battery industry, which I would encourage you to do, because as I said at the start, Indonesia should be a superpower in this supply chain. There's no reason not to take advantage of the competitive advantage you have with raw materials. And I know the strategy of the state is to do that to some degree, but I think it really will take entrepreneurs and people starting their own companies to make this happen. So final slide, just to say terima kasih banyak. Appreciate the opportunity to speak, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you again.